On the 29th of October, an angry crowd stormed the airport in Makhachkala in Russia's Dagestan region. They rushed onto the landing field, chanting anti-Semitic slogans, looking for passengers arriving from the Israeli city of Tel Aviv. Videos floating on social media show some protesters waving Palestinian flags and climbing onto idling planes in an attempt to break through the windows.
This is Flight 762 Dubai, Makhachkala. We've been sitting inside the airplane for more than 3 hours. Good thing we landed 40 minutes ahead of the schedule. But because there is a furious crowd out there, neither the Russian guard nor some sort of alpha nor the president of Dagestan can deal with. We are still sitting inside the plane and we are only being handed water.
These pro-Palestinian protesters had gathered together to denounce the Israeli actions in Gaza. Shortly afterwards, Russia's aviation agency Rosavizia announced that it had closed down the airport to incoming and outgoing flights. It is reported that 20 people were injured in the violence between the police and the civilians. Dagestan is mainly a Muslim Russian republic in the North Caucasus region. Its government voiced support for Gaza, but appealed to its citizens to remain calm and not to take part in such protests. Even the religious figure of the region, the Mufti of Dagestan, said the mob that stormed the airport was mistaken in its actions.
As for today's actions, I sincerely say you are mistaken. This issue cannot be resolved in this way. We will talk with the relevant people and will continue to try to resolve the issue differently. Not with emotions, not with rallies, but in an appropriate way.
Members of Moscow's Jewish community also expressed deep concern following the anti-Israel riot at Makhachkala airport.
Today, the airstrike against Jabalia is yet more evidence of the lack of a real plan by the Zionist entity, except for bombing children, women and civilians. All that is happening in Gaza is targeting the non-armed people of Palestine. It's terrifying that people can attack for no reason, all of a sudden. It's scary.
We stand for peace between nations. The Russian Federation is a multinational country where everyone lives in peace, of all confessions and religions. And in no case should political events spill over to our common home, the Russian Federation, in which we all live. And in no case should international politics influence interconfessional relations in our country.
The White House compared the Israeli-targeted storming of a Dagestan airport to anti-Jewish pogroms that were perpetrated throughout Europe in the 19th and 20th centuries.
I think you all saw what happened in Dagestan, Russia, yesterday, in what can only be described as a chilling demonstration of hate, bigotry, intimidation. Some people have compared it to the pogroms of the late 19th and early 20th century, and I think that's probably an apt description.
Pogrom is a Russian word designating an organized massacre or attack against a particular ethnic group. It is commonly associated with the historic targeting of Jewish communities in Russia and Eastern Europe.
So the systemic issue is that the authorities have shut down any attempts to publicly display support for Palestine. This is because of a general fear over gatherings of people, especially in the wake of last year's anti-mobilization protests. This is a very dangerous situation for the Kremlin because this is an instance of violence that they are not controlling. There's going to be mass arrests over the coming days.
As the war between Israel and Hamas rages on, thousands of people are flooding the streets across the US and Europe in solidarity with Palestinians. Demanding an end to the Israeli military action in Hamas-controlled Gaza.
Whether in the US, whether in Europe, whether in parts of Asia, The protests include not only those who are Muslims, not only those who are Arabs, it includes Jews, Christians, people of all different faiths, and people who, of course, quite often aren't Palestinian, to raise the general issue, which is, shouldn't we get back to the core of this, that a civilian, whether in Israel or in Palestine, shouldn't live under the fear of bombing and death, or under the fear of being murdered in their beds by someone who considers them an enemy.
Some of these protests have heightened tensions in many countries, with authorities nationwide warning of increased anti-Semitic acts and violence. We take a look at some of the pro-Palestinian protests that turned violent in the US and European cities. France is home to Europe's largest Muslim and Jewish communities. The Middle East conflict has often stoked domestic tensions in the past. And that's exactly what happened this time too, with the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. In the first week of the war, the police clashed with a pro-Palestinian crowd. French police used tear gas and water cannons to break up a rally in Paris in support of the Palestinian people. President Emmanuel Macron urged the French to remain united and refrain from bringing the Israel-Hamas conflict home. The French government then banned such demonstrations. Despite the ban, thousands of protesters gathered in central Paris, Lille, Bordeaux, and other cities. Protesters from various backgrounds supporting the Palestinian cause sprayed "Free Palestine" on the monument underpinning the Republic Plaza in eastern Paris. Many even wore Palestinian flags around their shoulders and chanted, "We are all Palestinians."
Unfortunately, we were not able to demonstrate in good conditions because the demonstration was banned while the Israeli cause was authorized. You see what I mean? This is not normal under the rule of law. In France, you cannot demonstrate as is your right freely. Unfortunately, freedom is no longer here, and we are forced to defy French law, as one would say, and demonstrate to show the truth.
Nous sommes obligés de braver la loi française entre guillemets et manifester pour montrer la vérité.
C'est une grosse injustice, c'est une injustice. This is great injustice. I feel anger and I don't understand. Today I'm wearing a keffiyeh and a riot police officer told me it will cost you 135 euros if you don't remove it. If freedom today is worth 135 euros, then we will pay the price.
Si la liberté vaut 135 euros aujourd'hui, je les payerai.
Fighting in the Middle East in the past has led to tensions in France, that is estimated to have the world's third largest Jewish population after Israel and the US, and the largest Muslim population in Western Europe. Over the past 3 weeks, huge protests have also taken place in major cities in the United Kingdom. Tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters marched in central London and across the UK to demand the British government call for a ceasefire after Israel's military widened its air and ground attacks on the Gaza Strip.
The Hamas, they have the right to defend themselves because it is not something new. They were bombarded by the Israelis all the way for many, many years. This is their land, Gaza is their land, they should defend themselves.
Today, I'm here today to show my love and my compassion for the Palestinians who are suffering in Gaza and all the innocent lives that are being lost. We've came together today. It's not about religion, it's about humanity coming together and fighting for what's right.
Palestine! No peace!
No peace!
Meanwhile, a driver appeared to lead the chant over the public address system on a central line tube, packed with people heading to a pro-Palestine march in central London. Video posted on social media showed the driver saying "Free, free," to which passengers responded, "Palestine."
Palestine! Palestine! Palestine!
Transport for London, also known as TfL, investigated and suspended the driver responsible for the incident.
Palestine!
In a shocking incident, a pro-Palestine supporter released a swarm of rats inside a McDonald's outlet in Birmingham while shouting "Free Palestine." Pictures shared online appear to show the spray-painted mice in the colors of the Palestine flag: red, green, white and black. This comes after McDonald's Israel stirred controversy online earlier this month by announcing that it would provide free meals to Israeli soldiers amid the ongoing conflict with Hamas. As tensions flare in Europe over the Israel-Hamas war, pro-Palestinian rallies across the cities of the United States also unraveled into unrest and chaos. On the 22nd of October 2023, a rally held in solidarity with Palestinians became the target of a possible hate crime in the United States' Minneapolis. Supporters at a pro-Palestine rally blocked traffic along the streets near a pedestrian bridge. A vehicle reportedly drove through the crowd of protesters. Video on social media showed protesters hitting a car before the person inside drove away. The Minneapolis Police Department said no injuries were reported in the incident. In Illinois, a man fired a shot into the air, and another pepper-sprayed a pro-Palestinian demonstration near an Israel solidarity event in Chicago's northern suburb, Skokie. According to reports, pro-Palestinian groups originally planned to protest elsewhere, but moved to Skokie upon learning of the Israeli solidarity event. A man drove his car into the group, got out and fired a shot in the air before the police took him into custody. It was also reported that the man's car had been covered with Israeli flags. At Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protesters faced off in a clash that resulted in several arrests. Videos of the incident showed police trying to calm the crowds of rival protesters. Tulane University denounced the rally that was held without the school's approval and descended into a brawl that ended with 3 students being assaulted. For the past 3 weeks, New York has been rocked by demonstrations, rallies, and vigils in support of the Palestinians and Israel. Thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters poured onto the streets of Brooklyn, New York's largest district, to voice their anger at Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip. The march was organized by the Palestinian-led community called Within Our Lifetime, and the participants traveled from the Brooklyn Museum to the Brooklyn Bridge, chanting "Free, Free Palestine."
Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine!
New York's Grand Central Terminal, one of the city's major transit hubs, was forced to shut down after hundreds of protesters demanded a ceasefire of the ongoing war.
And most of those protests are people just trying to express their sentiments that they don't like what's going on, that they're concerned, they're angry, they're fearful. When you do have clashes, I think you realize that Israel-Palestine is an issue that brings up a lot of emotion. It has done for as long as I've been around, and indeed ever since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. That in the era of social media, where quite often, instead of the discussion like you and I are having, people wind up shouting or even try to spread disinformation, that can agitate people.
Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
On the 27th of October, a large demonstration of mostly Jewish New Yorkers took over the main hall of Grand Central Station in protest of Israel's bombardment of Gaza. The protesters wore black t-shirts that said "Not in our name." Banners were unfurled reading "Palestinians should be free" and "Israelis demand ceasefire now." And then this happened.
Committee will suspend. And again, I appreciate that people feel passionately about these issues. I would ask that you respect our witnesses and our...
During a Senate hearing, as soon as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken started speaking, a protester was seen holding a placard calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Secretary Blinken and U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin were testifying about the White House's funding of $106 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and the U.S. border. Numerous anti-war protesters raised red-stained hands in the air and repeatedly yelled, "Ceasefire now! Protect the children of Gaza and stop funding genocide." The Capitol Police later removed them from the room. Moving on to the Arab world. Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia to protest Israel's actions in its war on Hamas. The protesters raised slogans in solidarity with Gaza and against the displacement of Palestinians. On the 31st of October, nearly 2,000 Jordanians protested in support of Palestinians. They gathered in the capital Amman, near the Israeli embassy.
Today, the airstrike against Jabalia is yet more evidence of the lack of a real plan by the Zionist entity, except for bombing children, women, and civilians. All that is happening in Gaza is targeting the non-armed people of Palestine.
I'm short of words after I saw this massacre. This is the first time I'm witnessing a massacre like the one I saw today. I've never seen something like this in my life. Not in the previous war, not the one before, not in any war. I collapsed.
I think another reason why much of the international community, not just European leaders, but again, leaders from Asia, leaders from Latin America, the UN Secretary Antonio Guterres, why they have spoken out about the need for a humanitarian pause and a step back from the violence is because of the possibility that you could get an expanded war throughout the Middle East. It is not just Hamas that is supported by Iran. It is also Hezbollah in Lebanon. There are militias in Syria and Iraq. At this point, I don't think anybody wants a wider conflict. I don't think Israel wants to fight Hezbollah in an all-out war. I don't think Hezbollah wants to fight Israel.
In late October, hundreds of Iraqis protested against Israel by blocking oil tanker trucks from crossing into Jordan, saying they will not allow Iraqi oil to be exported to countries that have peace agreements with Israel. On the other hand, Kurdistan parties that control north of Iraq and have cordial relations with Israel still remain silent on the issue.
There is tension between the Kurdish north and the rest of the country. And there is a fear of spillover, that the conflict in Israel-Gaza could unsettle Iraq and send it into a cycle of violence. I think the Iraqi government, therefore, is trying to limit any expression of protest on the streets.
On the 28th of October, hundreds of thousands of people in Istanbul protested Israeli action against Palestinians. Addressing the pro-Palestine rally, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Israel was an occupier and repeated his stance about Hamas not being a terrorist organization.
Just as Netanyahu is a terrorist, the opposition says Hamas is a terrorist organization as well. Shame on you. Hey Israel, how did you come here? How did you enter here? You are an occupier. You are an organization. The Turkish people know this. Hey West, I am talking to you. Do you want to wage a fight between the cross and the crescent again? If you are making such an effort, know that Turks have not died. These people are standing tall and with the same determination and in the same way as what we are in Libya, what we are in Karabakh, we are the same in the Middle East.
Böyle bir gayretin içerisindeyseniz
As Israel-Hamas war enters the next phase, the situation in Gaza grows dire by the hour, multiplying the woes of millions of Palestinians. Will these voices of the people denouncing the war be heard, or will they fall on deaf ears?